Hello, we're coming to you from London all this week, where an American photographer came for a visit 40 years ago and decided to stay. Today he's made a name for himself as the portrait photographer for royals and celebrities. Hello and welcome. In the more than 4 decades since Brooklyn-born David Montgomery left the US for that fateful visit to London, he has left a distinct mark on the world of photography. His amazing collection of portraits includes some of the world's best-known public figures, ranging from the legendary rocker Jimi Hendrix and Queen Elizabeth of Britain, to lesser-known faces like that of an older Mae West. Well, today, David Montgomery is the photographer of choice for celebrities, politicians and royals. And don't forget, we take your questions and comments on the programme, and the numbers are there on your screen. David, it's great to have you with us.
Thank you very much.
And really, I'm a fan of your work, I have to confess. And it was interesting to read. You'd come to Britain pretty much at the end of the 50s, in 1959, and you'd come as an apprentice with award-winning photographer, Lester Book. Yeah. Now, it was said that you fell in love with the soft, romantic light of England.
Correct.
Obviously, you missed all the rain, I guess, at that time.
Well, coming from New York, which always has bright sunlight, even in the wintertime, and I came here and they were still burning wood fires and coal, and it was smoky and misty. Even in the movies, I remember going in the movies and it was misty. And I just loved it. And the atmosphere, the soft light was magic.
Now, so much has changed in that time. I mean, you know, everyone now thinks of it as grey and gloomy.
Yeah.
You know, you describe it as soft and romantic. How much in that time, since you've been here, I mean, you know, sort of more British than British now, I guess. Yeah. How much have you, you know, how much has it changed for you? How much does it still have that appeal?
Well, that's a hard question. Some bits have changed, especially once you go out of London. I think England is still how it was when I got here. But now you don't know who's what. Everybody's wearing Gap clothes, and it's multinational. The main thing about London when I came was you could park anywheres.
Right.
Now that's finished. You could just park.
Now you're just parked in traffic. That's the difference.
It, yeah.
But what was really interesting was that, you know, as a youngster, I mean, say youngster, 25 years old, you got the first, this first sort of commission with Queen Elizabeth.
Yes.
How did that come about?
You know, I don't know. I worked for the Sunday Times, and I got a phone call from the Observer saying, would I photograph the Queen? And I said no, because I was too frightened. And I went home early, and my wife said, well, what's cooking? And I said, oh, I just been asked to photograph the Queen, but I'm not going to do it. And she said, are you mad? Pick up the telephone. I called back. I think the guy's name was Brian Hayes. He was the picture editor up at the Observer, and I said, have you got a photographer yet? And he said no. So I said, well, I'll do it. Okay. So I did it, and changed my life a bit. Definitely burnt out my nervous system in one go.
But built a career, which is great.
Well, yeah, it did. It did. A lot of people who didn't want to talk to me on my street all wanted to invite me in for sherry.
Right. Now, but you've obviously had a fantastic range of people you've photographed since then. I was interested to read that, you know, you did from royalty to rock royalty, of course, from, you know, Queen Elizabeth to Mick Jagger. Right. But you still think that that picture of the Queen is the better one? Or one of the favourite ones? I don't
know. To me, that was very special because I did love it here. I wasn't living here under duress. And to be asked to photograph her was indeed an honour. And we shot up in Balmoral in Scotland. So the best bit about that, I'll just tell you, is we photographed her outside, and it was just myself, my assistant, the guy from the magazine, and Her Majesty. And we were walking down the road. I didn't know where we were going, and she let out a whistle like for a taxi in New York. And we thought, who did this? And all these ponies came to the gate. They were penned in, and all the ponies came to her, and that was very touching.
Now, I wonder, you know, one thing that you did was an incredible picture with Jimi Hendrix. We showed that at the beginning. Yeah. It's all the smoke I hear. There's a great story around how that smoke was set around him.
Okay, well, Jimmy, he was just breaking in England, so to me he was just another rock musician. We took him to the Roundhouse, and my idea was to have a wall of flames behind them. That seemed to be the right thing to do. And 10 feet behind him, 2 boys were standing. One had a match, the other had a watering can filled with petrol. And he walked in a straight line away, and when he got to the other side, I said, "Go." They lit it, boom. I don't know how we didn't fry the poor guy.
And then he later set he set his guitar on fire at Woodstock anyway.
Well,
so
yeah. I don't know if I was the catalyst for that, but and the flames only lasted for about 3 seconds, but it was pretty hot.
But you got the shot.
Yeah, I got it. I got it.
Now, you know, when you deal with major celebrities and so on, you're dealing with people who have often big egos or have big expectations.
Very big.
How do you handle that as a
Sometimes you
photographer?
can't. You try to let them know you're on their side. So, but some people don't want to know that. They're just difficult, and you win some, you lose some. Some people are famous enough that the fact that they're standing there is enough. But I won't go into names. But
what is it that you do that's different, that catches? Well, what makes a good portrait photograph rather than just a snapshot?
Right. Well, the man that I work for, Lester, always tried to tell me that the true test of a good photographer was using a normal lens and just taking a picture of somebody against a white background. And if you could do that, you could pretty much do anything. So I always kept that in mind, and I wanted to feel that if I took a picture today, in 30 years, it would still be timeless. Now, people's clothing change and their hair changes and styles change, but I didn't want to get in the way of the person, so I wanted the content to always be them, not me, but them.
I want to actually bring up a picture of, that was done by Eugene Ashley, who's one of, you say is very iconic, this photograph from the turn of the century. And tell me about this. We'll bring it up now. There it is. What was so special about this picture?
Well, this was at the turn of the century when photography was a hit-and-miss deal. And Ashley was a failed photographer, failed actor. And he wandered around the streets in Paris with this big view camera, and he had to put his head under the cloth and take pictures. Now, just to get to the point, he had a weird lens on the camera, took a picture of this woman, and you can see that there's a distortion where the street is running off at an angle. And then he would sell these photographs to artists. And Utrillo was evidently one of the artists that bought his photographs and incorporated that perspective into the photographs.
So it's how photography influences art.
So photography actually helped art out a bit.
We have a call on the line from Nigeria. James, good to have you with us on the call from Nigeria. What would you like to ask David Montgomery?
Yes.
James, are you there?
Hello, I enjoy your program.
Hi.
And hello?
Thank you. Yeah, go on. Can you ask your question,
Hello?
James?
My question is about the aesthetic of African art. In terms of aesthetics, I enjoy what he's doing, but in terms of aesthetics, how can he do what he does in terms of the African art representation so that we can now try to link up the African artworks and interpretation to the kind of concepts he has developed, which is very interesting.
Okay. James, the sound's very distorted. Are you asking specifically about African art, or was it just art in general? As a well, let me your take. Let's get your take on African art. I think that's what James was asking about. How it sort of when you talk about different styles, for example, photography. When you look at different art, does that have an influence on how you approach any of your work?
Well, African art is very important. Picasso, especially, stole it. For lack of a better word. So it's very important, and I think there's a few artists in London who use the art. I forgot his name now. He uses elephant dung. I think he is African in his paintings. So I love it, and I've seen South African art, but Africa is a gigantic. Where in Africa are we talking about?
Well, there it was Nigeria, our caller.
Nigeria.
But let me actually get up another picture here. Now, this isn't one of yours. This is Terry O'Neill, a friend of yours, another
Yes.
well-renowned, famous
Right.
photographer. And I want you to talk about this particular picture that we have of
Right,
Terry
I'd
O'Neill's
love to.
picture. Yeah.
Well, Terry is a good friend of mine and a bit of a hero of mine, and he photographed Brigitte Bardot, and I don't think he had very long to do it, but I just think it was so iconic with the gauloise in her mouth, her hair blowing, and she's copied up till today. She is one of the main icons for women with her beautiful hair and just that look.
Well, let me get an email question we got to you here, David. This came in from Kansas in the US.
Okay.
And Deborah in Kansas wrote, photos are what stick in one's mind. I remember a photograph of the Queen of England inspecting the damage done by the bombings in London.
Right.
It's seared into my memory. No movie could do that. Now, I think, you know, I'd love to get your take on this, how a still image can sometimes be more dynamic than moving pictures.
Okay, ever since I was a young boy, I always heard that expression, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Maybe it isn't, maybe it is, but I remembered it because I couldn't write a postcard. And it is true that many of the war pictures, just that simple image, and here, in this case, the Queen, probably remained in people's minds for the rest of their lives, especially about war. I don't see it ending wars, but that's another story.
United States again here on an email. Glenn from the US says, are there any pictures in your collection that you have any regrets about and wish you had never taken?
Yeah, probably. I've made some people look like they were nice people when they were horrible, but that's what I get paid to do. So, no, I think, no, there's one or two movie people who I think I've flattered more than they should have been, but no, I try to be honest.
I'm going to take you back through time because you very kindly brought in this picture of your father,
Right?
And it is quite a striking picture. I just want to bring this up and ask, what was it about? What's so special about this? I mean, of course, it is your father, but the kind of way it influenced you.
Right. Well, as you can see, first of all, from the angle, looking up at this camera, this is before television, and this is what must have been in the 40s. Early 40s, where the camera was magic, and there is my father holding this magic box capturing images on film, and I couldn't even understand how could the image go in and be invisible and stay there. And the one thing that blew my mind ever since I was a child, when my father told me there's a measure on the focus that says infinity. And when he explained what infinity was, that was it. It beat what is God, because infinity, just I couldn't imagine there was no ending. So
what's interesting, and I should point this out to people who don't know this, I mean, obviously they know your work, but you're a music buff as well.
Yes.
You studied music and hope to be a jazz musician.
Yes,
I think you toured with a band for a while as well.
Yes, I did.
So I gather that's still very much a part of your life.
It is very much. In fact, I was just up at Tower or HMV in Piccadilly getting some very old jazz things. They have a fabulous collection. I went to a football game when I was 14. I had a crush on a cheerleader, and I stood next to the band, and I was right beneath the drummers, and that was it. Those drums played, and I was a dead man. And from that moment on, I've always loved the drums. I love the pulse of it and just the feeling of it. And I went to Juilliard School of Music, and I left it and went on the road around America in dance bands, and loved the company of musicians. And I think the thing about music, for the most part, is musicians play together. Photography, you're alone. Art, you're alone. Poetry, you're alone. Music, for the most part, it's a group. Even if they hate each other, they play together. And I love that.
You and Terry O'Neill, I should point out, both drummers.
Yeah, we're both drummers.
Compete in two fields, maybe.
Well, yeah, we talk a lot about music. And Terry is, he'll sing to me, you know, he's a fabulous character, and he loves his jazz. So that's all we talk about.
I hope to get him on, but taking you back to your photography, I've got to ask you what you make now. Having seen this sort of, you came here because of the light.
Yes.
You work with sort of, images in a certain way. What do you make about the transition to digital photography? The fact computers now can mold things, change things.
It's okay. I mean, everything changes, but most of the photographers I know, we love film. So you can shoot on film because film has depth, and then you can go to digital and go that way. It's a matter of economics, that if you shoot digitally, it's cheaper. And people don't want to spend the money. For a photographer to shoot 20 rolls of film, that's going to be a lot of money. But digitally, it won't cost anything. Of course, what they forgot about is how long it takes after to download it and all of that. But I find it very interesting. I find it interesting.
We had an SMS that just came in
Yes.
from Doha, and someone was asking, who was your most difficult person to shoot, if you want to admit that? You nearly did.
Barbara Streisand.
Can we have a quick why?
Difficult.
Okay, we can leave it at that.
Yeah.
Now, I just have to ask you just briefly before as we're running out of time, about your work as a professor. You teach
Yes,
students.
yes.
What I find fascinating reading about it was that you basically tell them not to listen to anything, but just
Right.
go with their instinct.
Right.
What is it? What's wrong with the technicalities, so to speak?
Well, I tell them to listen, but not to forget it after I tell them, and I hope that it goes into their subconscious so that it doesn't become mechanical. It will just come out. And I tell them, when you make enough mistakes, it will start becoming good. And in photography, I do believe you have to just make a lot of mistakes, and it will happen. And you can, with a bit of help, and if you have the right guidance, you can become good. Being good as a professional is another story. That's a supreme dedication.
I find it fascinating. You don't ask them to write 2,000-word essays.
No. I know they all complain they have to write 2,000 words. I've said I'd rather that they take 2,000 pictures, but the schools run a certain way. We're trying to change it, but I have to mind my P's and Q's.
David, I hope we can get you back again. There's always so much to
lovely.
talk about with you. Fantastic
Thank you.
stuff. And I'm glad we were able to cover it. But look
Thank
forward
you.
to chatting again. Thank you very
kind
much
of
for your
you.
time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So that's it for this edition of the show. And tomorrow's we look at the possibility of Turkey entering Iraq to attack the PKK, the Kurdistan Workers' Party. Don't forget, if you have any thoughts about pressing issues around the world, send your emails to riz@aljazeera.net. We'll see you next time. Street Talk is next.